that symbol came from somewhere, and I don't think they thought of it here and over here. I think it came from one source, is what I'm trying to say. I think it came from one source, and that source, wherever it was...
spiritual source.
Well, yeah, it probably was a spiritual source, but I mean, as far as location goes, I feel like it came from the Mesopotamian bowl, that basin over there, and that includes the Middle East and stuff, and I believe that's where it came from. But it was, like I said, pretty shocking when I saw that there at Moundville. And it was actually the catalyst for my study on the Nephilim and the giants and the fallen angels. That was really what got me started, because I couldn't forget that, and I couldn't stop thinking about that and what I'd seen there. And so I began studying, I began researching, and then I began to realize that all this was related to what the Bible talked about as high places. Now, it took me a while to grasp that the mounds were high places. Matter of fact, I had been studying even the Nephilim, the fallen angels, for a couple years before all of a sudden it dawns on me. Oh, wait a minute. These are the high places, and then scriptures back that up, you know. But it did take me a while to grasp that. But concerning Moundville, though, they had a lot of imported goods from other mound sites, like copper and galena and mica and the marine shell that's been excavated from that site, which I've already talked about copper being, that being the major place for copper. But this site is known for its excellent pottery work and stonework and the copper work. They embossed on the copper, and which I've seen some of it at the museum, and it's just beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's really good. And you don't see people doing handwork like that anymore. People rarely, I mean, the arts and crafts trade in the last 20 years has kind of brought a lot of that to the fore, more people doing crafts by hand. But up until then, you rarely saw anybody doing that much craft work. But they did some beautiful work there on this copper. But you're going to see at Moundville, you're going to see things like the cross and circle, the eye and the hand, the falcons, the winged and the horned serpents, the forked eye, the skull and bones, and scalps. And they also have burial mounds, and they seem to be focused on all those things that we just mentioned. But I also visited the Oakville site in Alabama, and this mound is located near Bankhead. Now, see, Oakville was the last video I made on the mystery of the serpent seed was done at Oakville and Florence, Alabama, and so it's near the Bankhead National Forest. But we've been to the Bankhead, you remember? Went to Double Bridges and went to the Civil War Museum and just several places up there. Saw some beautiful waterfalls. But Bankhead, something I didn't know, has petroglyphs and prehistoric drawings and rock carvings, and that's very near to the Oakville mounds. It's near to the Florence mounds. And so there may be some relationship there with the mounds and with these petroglyphs and stuff. But the Oakville Indian Mounds Park and the museum is on 83 acres. And they dedicated it to the ancient Native Americans and the Cherokee Nation. And it says that it preserves 20 2,000-year-old mounds built by the Middle Woodland people around 1 to 500 AD. But I've been there. This last time was my third time, and I was like, I don't see all these 20-something mounds they claim they have. So I asked them about them, and they said the only ones left is the large ceremonial mound, and then a couple little mounds in front was probably burial mounds. But anyway, they were named, it was given this name for the use of the copper and galena that they got there. And but the most significant earthwork there is the burial mounds and the ceremonial mound, which they call a Copina. Copina means that's a time period. In other words, like the Hopewell and the Dina, the Copina is another time period. But they do say that the largest ceremonial mound surviving in Alabama today is there in Oakville, and it's about 27 feet high. Now, there are other mounds taller in Alabama, but that's the ceremonial mound, and it's the largest one here in Alabama. And its base is about almost 2 acres, and the top is a platform mound, and the top of it's about 1 acre. But we have some friends out in Arkansas that took us to Felsenthal National Park in Arkansas.
Management area there.
Yeah, to the management area there, and they took us to a mound there. But when I stood on that mound and looked down, I saw other mounds out there. And they say that there was about 200 or over 200 Native American sites there in that Felsenthal National Forest. And it was the Caddo tribe that lived as far as 5,000 years ago there in Arkansas that built these mounds. And these sites include remains of seasonal fishing camps. We saw some of the fish because there's a big, huge stream. Looks like a river, but it's I don't know what it is. It might be a river. I don't know if it's a river or a creek or what. It's really big. It's not. It wasn't real deep right there where we were, but it's
cypress trees.
Yeah, a lot of cypress trees and weird looking fish. I don't know what the name of those fish was. You could call them, but it was weird looking fish.
Had teeth, whatever.
But anyway, this mound that he took us to, I could see some more around it, and I bet if those trees were down, you could see them all over the place because if it contained over 200 structures, like the archaeologists say, and contained plazas, ceremonial plazas, and temple mounds, and large villages, we were probably in the area of that. Right. So I thought that was really interesting. That was a lot of fun too. That they're like, oh, we know where someone's at. We'll take you, and they did. But I put out a Poverty Point video before, and I don't know if I'll do it again or not. But I've got on our Dago Diggers channel, I have a video where we went to Poverty Point. But I also have Poverty Point on this channel where I taught on this fallen angels and the mystery of the serpent seed there at Poverty Point. I think I did it at 2 different videos. So Poverty Point's a really big site, so I used it pretty good. But it's an amazing site. I like going to Poverty Point. I've been 5 times. So the Poverty Point was built somewhere around 1700 BC to 1100 BC, and now at the museum it had 2100. So I'm not real sure, but somewhere between 2100 and 1700 was when it began. So and it ended around 1100 BC. So. But I use their dating. I don't use their CE and all that BCE. I use BC and AD because I grew up with that, and it means before Christ and after the death of Christ, and so I still use that. You know, unbelievers can change it if they want, and that's what they want to use. That's fine, but I'm not going to because you know, I grew up with that, and I believe that's what we should use. But anyway. They had other materials there at Poverty Point that they got in trade, and they used soapstone, like from Alabama and Georgia, and they had copper and galena, and that was probably from Michigan. And the mound there is 72 foot tall, the tallest one. There's several mounds. I think there's about 6 or 7 mounds there. And then they have these trenches, or not trenches, but mounds that make like almost like a half moon there, that make almost like a half circle there, and they have found millions of artifacts on this site. I mean, this is probably one of the, other than Cahokia, probably one of the largest mound sites as far as things they found. But the half circle mounds at Poverty Point are very interesting.
What were the half circle mounds at Poverty Point? Anyway, what were they? The half circles. I mean, I know what a full circle is.
Yeah, what were they?
Half circle mound.
Well, what they were was they had 3 sets of, they call them ditches or trenches or whatever, but they took and they made in a section here, and then in the center they had a section, and in the right side they had a section, but there was 5 or 6 in each one, and they were just little bitty mounds that were about this wide. And then it was flat, and then it would be another round, and it makes like a half circle, all 3 of them together. But the interesting part is, in the museum I noticed that the first 2 had magnetic resonance on them, and I can't remember if it's the first one or the second one. One had more than the other. One was really highly magnetic, and I find that very interesting because a lot of these mound sites, a lot of the megalithic structures, and things like that, a lot of the Stonehenges and places like that have high magnetic resonance. And I find that very interesting because, to me, that's an anomaly concerning these places. Another one besides all the other things you named a while ago and I named. So I find that very interesting that it's in these half circle ridges that they have there at Poverty Point. I thought that was, to me, I was like, wow, that's fascinating. But it's not just there at Poverty Point. It's in a lot of places. And I think all of that ties in. I think that's showing you that there's a tie between all these places. And then when you have the solar alignments, that makes it even more anomalous. And then when you think about it, like I watched this show one day, and it shows that one of the places, the mound, I think it's up in New Hampshire, it actually makes a straight line to Stonehenge in England. And I thought, and to some other megalithic structures, and I thought that was very fascinating. So I believe with all my heart, there is a tie in with these things in America and the things over in the rest of the world. And so, anyway, did you have anything else you want to ask about Poverty Point?
Yeah. Do you think that those were idols, and did they have some kind of spiritual significance to the Poverty Point people?
I don't think the ridges were idols or the mounds or anything, but they did find some human figurines there. At Poverty Point, there may have been idols. They were made out of red jasper stone. There was an owl design that was carved from red jasper, and then they found some ceramic human figurines.
These wasn't in groves either.
These were just artifacts found on the site itself.
Okay,
yeah, and they were beautiful. I mean, but yeah, those were probably more likely the idols that was there, because you find these little statues in just about every single mound site. They may be in the form of pipes or in the form of something else, but you find them just about everywhere. I'm not saying they definitely are, because I can't say definitely they are, but I believe that they were. But they found domestic tools, they found those human figurines, they found tons of stones from up to 800 miles away that have led them to believe that Poverty Point may have actually been a residential, where people live. May have been a trade place and a ceremonial center. Like, okay, when I say trade place, it's kind of like you and I sometimes will go to these big, huge flea markets to find things that we can't find in stores around here and stuff. And I think it may have been something kind of like that as well. And people came from a long way to trade, and that may be how they ended up with what they ended up with. Or else they traveled and got it from somewhere else and came there. But I agree that but as much as they found there, that it's possible that it was an area of trade, and people from all over the United States would come there, or, not too far away, but anyway. But in the 43-acre plaza that has these earthen C-shaped bridges, they had found the remains of huge post holes that were set up in circles. And it's on the left side where you first start out from the museum and go across the road where the ridges start on the left side. I don't know which direction, whether that's north, south, east, or west, I can't remember. But there's one on this side of the road where the museum is, and then there's one right across the road, right beside the ridges. And they are up to 213 feet in diameter. They're very large, but they have very large post holes sitting there, and they don't really know what it's for. There's just a lot of interesting things concerning Poverty Point. But now whether those, like I said, those human figurines were idols, I can't say, but I believe they may have been. And I don't know if they had any spiritual significance for the people at Poverty Point, unless they were some idols or there was something they worshipped. I can't, but I can't say, because that was so long ago and I don't have enough research on it, but I will research that a little bit more. But there's a mound near Poverty Point called the Lower Jackson Mound. It may have possibly been part of Poverty Point, but it's on private land now. No way you view this from the road. But if you're there, go by and see the Jackson Mound, because it's pretty neat. But then you have mounds in Mississippi, like on the Natchez Trace, the Vinyl Mounds. I can't even remember. There's a bunch of them we went to just on or right off the Natchez Trace, and the Vinyl Mounds aren't very big though, but they're a nice little walk if you want to go see them. They're from about 100 BC, and they found in the remains of one of them a woman, and she was placed between two parallel burnt oak logs at the base of the mound, and she was buried with ornamental copper spools at each wrist, greenstone and copper and galena projectile points they have found there as well. But they said that these don't originate in Mississippi. In other words, they didn't have the material to do that in Mississippi. And I believe it, because I've done rock hunting and looked for rocks in Mississippi. I found nothing like that. Of course, I didn't do it that much. But they said it was not there, so I believe them, and it was not there. But they're found there anyway, so they probably came from some trade or something from other mound sites. Then you've got the Winterville Mounds, and it's a very big site. And it has one really big mound. They're working on it right now, renovating everything. Even the mounds they're renovating, but you can't go in the museum, but you can walk out to the mounds and see them. But they're from the time period of about 1000 to 1450 AD, and they're probably what I called earlier copycat mounds because they're so late and closer to modern times, and I think they probably are what you call copycat mounds. But there's so many of these mounds across America and the world, not just America, but the world. And what they are, who built them, I don't think a whole lot of people knows for sure, but I do believe they're high places, according to the Bible's description of high places. You can believe what you want to about them, but I believe the Bible, and I believe this is what they were, what they are. And you know, I have another question about that. And why would people come from all over the world that's in the occult, and Wicca, New Age, the Druids, different ones like that, and come and worship at these mounds? I mean, that right there should tell you something. You know, and you have Christians who go to this and don't even know what they are. They don't understand what they are. And you know, the church should know more about what's going on in the world, and they should know more about their Bible. But you know, we just kind of as a church need to wake up and see what's really going on around us, because this idol worship is still going on today. It didn't stop when they destroyed the giants in the Bible. It's continuing on even to this day. And as a matter of fact, it's getting stronger. I mean, you take back like when they took from Syria it's like the entranceway over a door, I forget what it's called, but it came from one of the temples of Baal in Lebanon, or not Lebanon, Syria, and Palmyra, Syria, I think is where it came from, and they put it in New York, and people were going to see this thing in New York. I mean, when you have that going on, and you have these occultic groups.
The towers was that?
No, it was just somewhere in New York. I can't remember the exact spot in New York. But when you have these occult groups going to things like that and worshiping there at those things, I mean, it should wake people up, for the church up, and say, hey, wait a minute, something is going on here. The fight, the spiritual fight is getting stronger. And we can't fight in the spirit if we don't know anything about what's going on. Because this is spiritual warfare. We are in more spiritual warfare now in the church than we have ever been. And you can feel it at a lot of these places. I have to pray before I go to these places for God to protect us and to open our eyes to what's going on. So, I mean, you know, you just can't ignore the spiritual warfare that's going on, or you're going to be in trouble if you do. I don't know who built these, and I doubt the archaeologists know who built them. They say the Indians, and some of them we know that the Indians built the copycat ones, as I call them. That's what I call them. We know they built them, but some of these older, ancient ones, they don't know for sure who built them. And even the Native Americans was on some of them. They'll say, we don't know who built them. We didn't build them. There's no stories in our storytellers that let us know who built them. We didn't build them. And until NACFR came in, most tribes would say that, but nowadays you got some who saying, yeah, we built them, and because they see and I'm not putting the Native Americans down, don't get me wrong at all, that's not what my point is, but they see the advantage of saying, yeah, we built them, and but before that, they would say, we didn't build them, we don't know who built them, and they still, a lot of them say that, you know. But thousands of these mound sites and other, even the big megalithic structures, have been found with remains of huge bones, not just 7 foot, but even taller. And they get grabbed up, disappear, and then the people who claim that they got them don't know anything about them, and, you know, they deny it and all that. And, you know, it makes you wonder about it, so.
Why do you think they're covering this up?
I don't know, it's maybe their Darwin theory, they want to keep that, you know, I mean, but you think big tall giants would actually help their Darwin theory, really, you know what I'm saying, but it doesn't. I mean, I know it wouldn't, but I mean, you'd think they would think that. And I think they're worried that it would prove that the Bible's true, and that the Bible proves to be true. All of their followers, like, say, for example, the Smithsonian Museum and these museums that believe in the Darwin theory and evolution and all this stuff, they would lose some of their followers along with the money if they admit the truth about this, and you know, and come out and tell the truth about it. And if they lost the money, you know what that would do. So they got to keep up the lies. They got to keep up the
bankrupt
cover
hell,
up.
right?
Huh?
That bankrupt hell.
I don't know
If
about
they find out all the
bankrupting. I don't know about bankrupting it, but it would really cause a stir in hell for sure.
Yeah, it already has.
Okay, what's found in these mounds? I've named some things, but what else is found in them? They find arrowheads, pottery, burial, ceremonial items, copper items, smoking pipes. They find the little chunky stones where they played the games, and just so many things are found in these. And you can kind of get an idea of the life of these people, the tribes that these revolved around, these mound-made mountains, when you see the things that's been discovered. When you go into the museums at Poverty Point and Moundville and places like that, Winterville, you know, you begin to get a kind of an idea of what their life was like there. Sometimes the mounds are different. They're not all the same. Larry's like, they're the same thing, why do you want to go? Because they're not. They're different. So every one of them is there's something different about them. That's why I like to go, because they're so interesting to me, because every single one has something different. Okay, maybe they have a cone-shaped mound, but it's different. I don't know how to explain it, but it's always different. There are never two mound sites exactly the same, and I just find it extremely interesting. But some of them had like stone circles. Some of them had earthworks. You remember we went to some in Ohio that they had a complete all the way around it, like the circle mound in Ohio in Newark had a mound, round circle all the way around the main mound, and I think it was like an eagle or something in the center. I thought it was crossed because what it looked like, but it wasn't. It was actually like the claws of a bird. It made like 3 points out, or 4 points, I forget exactly. And so they all have these odd things: moats, animal effigies, solar alignments, magnetic resonance. It's just, you know, really, really, really interesting, these mounds, and they're so large. You know, they're so large.
Well, the question was, how are they able to build these mounds so large and to align them with the sun and sometimes with the moon? You know, at certain times, and without modern technology, you know, because our society don't think they had any kind of things but sticks and rocks to do things with.
Yeah, the scientists or archaeologists will say, okay, they wove these little baskets about this tall and big around, maybe about this tall, and they went and they dug all this with a stone rock and put all this dirt in these boxes. I mean, not boxes, but baskets, and then they carried them one basket at a time. If you realize how ridiculous that sounds, and it really does sound ridiculous.
Sounds like Darwin theory to me.
It's almost as ridiculous as the Darwin theory, to be honest about it. But I don't believe that's what they did. I mean, that's just crazy if you really think about it. It don't make a lot of sense. It would have took them forever, because, I mean, when you study how many dump load trucks, I forget which mound it was, but there was one mound that they claimed if you put the dirt on dump trucks, that it would be like 3 miles of dump trucks. I mean, that would take them forever to do that. I don't believe they did it that way, and there's a lot of people who don't fall for that. And to line these sites, take the Serpent Mound, Ohio we went to, we climbed up to the top of the tower, and you still couldn't hardly see that whole thing. Now, part of it was because it was trees, but even without the trees, you couldn't get good detail on it, way up, even. And so, I mean, you had to have, like he said, a drone or something like that, or a helicopter to be able to see it. So how did they do these without modern technology? I mean, it seems, I don't even know if modern technology could do it, you know?
The Birdman probably flew over and gave them instructions.
Well, you know, the Bible tells us that Satan's the prince of the power of the air.
The Birdman.
And I think that, you know, I agree. L.A. Marzulli says it's fallen angel technology. I like that phrase. I really like that terminology, because I think that's kind of what it was. I think Satan gave them the technology, or Satan gave them the knowledge, that's what technology means, on how to build these things, and that's what they did. I mean, you take the Nazca lines in Peru. they have a little tower there for one, and you still can't, which I haven't been there, but I've seen pictures of it, and I've seen people take pictures from that tower, and they can't take pictures of that thing. It don't show up good. So the only way you can actually see it really good is in a plane or something. And if they didn't have planes, how did they do that? And you can ask me that, but I don't know what to tell you because
Right.
I don't know how they did it. But I believe that their intelligence came from something out of this world, and I don't think it was above. I think it was below. And I think it's like the Book of Enoch probably says that these fallen angels gave the women and the men too, I'm sure, the technology or the knowledge to do things, and I think that's where it came from. But anyway, the next thing we're going to be talking about is the serpent cult. We're going to try to finish the Nakash or the serpent. And if you notice, we talked today about how so many of these sites found the serpent there. Moundville has a lot of the serpent things there. And so next thing we're going to talk about the serpent cult as soon as we finish the Nakash, which we'll probably finish real soon. And so anyway, thank you for watching and listening and hearing us. I hope you enjoyed this a little more than the others. Got a little more out of it. I hope it was a little more interesting. I don't know, but hopefully. But we thank you for watching, and you be blessed, and come back again.